What a game we had Thursday night between the Thunder and the Spurs. Marco Bellinelli balling out, LaMarcus Aldridge, DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook career high in assists, and Paul George continuing to ascend and play at an MVP level. What are you expecting in tonight's game, Griff?
I think you're going to see a much more concerted effort on the defensive end from Oklahoma City, particularly as it pertains to guarding the three-point line. I think they understand a little bit of what they did in terms of scrambling to help on LaMarcus, and they'll probably make some adjustments to that.
Brendan, that was a double overtime game, which means a lot of guys played more minutes than they're used to. Did you have a game in your career in which you played way more minutes than you were used to?
Yeah, I think I had, I'm not sure what team we played against, but I remember playing 38 minutes and then flying to Philly like the next day. And I didn't want to get out of my bed in the hotel because I was a guy that was used to playing anywhere from, 20 to 30 minutes per game. And just those extra 8 minutes had my body fried. It felt like I had just been in a prize fight. So it's one of those situations where when you get those heavy minute games, you really feel it. And it's not just athletes talking about it or anything like that. You really feel physically fatigued, your legs feel heavy, and that's why it's important that you find a way to take care of your body, whether that's making sure you get proper ice, massage, stretching, whatever, but you have to make sure you're ready to bounce back. I was young, I didn't do any of those things, so I was on slow motion the next day.
So basically what you're saying is there's no way we should expect the Spurs to come out and hit their first 14 three-pointers.
Doubt it. First 14 three-pointers, that's a little tough to do. I think it was a great game on Thursday. I think the score is going to be down a lot. I think the Spurs are a very good offensive team right now, one of the most efficient in the league, but I don't think they're going to come out that red hot. I think we're going to see these teams come down scoring quite a bit.
It's interesting because even in a loss, sometimes you see the best of a team. I think that's what we saw with the Thunder, Griff. It seemed as if Russell Westbrook, trusting his teammates, making the extra pass, some of the guys we deem as role players hitting big shots for the Thunder, that felt like a growth game for them.
Yeah, certainly what they got out of Terrence Ferguson was a really good sign. And if that's something that can continue and they can grow from there, I think it would be a real positive for them. Really, one of the things that they lack is a two-way wing that can give them shot making and defense. And if Terrence can be that guy, that would be a big help for this club.
Yeah, Terrence Ferguson is the next level athlete. He has some spectacular plays where he's flying above the rim. If he can be consistent from a defensive standpoint and hitting shot standpoint, that's exactly what OKC needs. They need him to develop into that. That would open up so much more driving lanes for guys like Schroeder, Russ, Paul George. If he was that steady guy you could see in the corner that just didn't miss threes. So Terrence Ferguson took some steps on Thursday. Hopefully he can continue that tonight.
How about a next-level athlete that plays below the rim, someone you're familiar
Who's that?
with? The Auto Trader starting lineups for the Spurs and the Thunder. Pau Gasol out there at the center position. I guess, like you were saying, don't necessarily need the defense as much on a guy like Steven Adams because those are too good.
Well, and Pau is healthy now, too. He was out for a big span of that where they were really tinkering with the lineup and playing Jakob more.
Any particular matchup you're looking at there, Brendan?
Battle of the role players. I'm looking at Terrence Ferguson and Forbes. I want to see which one of those guys is going to stand out and have a really, really good game. Forbes has been shooting the ball well all season long. Ferguson stepped up, really had a good game last game. So I want to see which role player can step up.
You know, Ferguson's an interesting player in the sense that when you saw him coming out, he looked like a guy, okay, he's hyper athletic, but is he going to improve enough? And he certainly has already, Brendan.
Yeah, he definitely is improving. And you also have to look at the fact that this was a kid that played overseas. He didn't go to college. So he's trying to really come back here and figure everything out. It's going to take him some time, but I'm sure he's going to turn into a great player for the Oklahoma City Thunder just because most of the time when you're that great of an athlete, eventually you figure it out. The light bulb goes off.
Thunder and Spurs Volume 2. Russell Westbrook always has the mixtape ready. And DeMar DeRozan, he's been dishing out assists as well.
There's your matchup, DeMar, Paul George.
So many great players. That's coming up next. Tip-off in just a few minutes. Welcome into the Auto Trader pregame show. Chris Miles here with David Griffin, Brennan Hayward. Hey, the Spurs and the Thunder rematch of Thursday night's game, and LaMarcus Aldridge in that Thursday night game put up a career-high 56 points. Spurs hit their first 14 three-pointers.
Wow.
And tonight we get an encore between those two teams. Oh, man, this should be an exciting one. What are you looking most forward to seeing, Griff?
Well, I think it's fascinating that since December 1st, OKC was the second best, most efficient defensive team in the league, and San Antonio had been 7th in that span. And then they play the first game of this series and go 154, 147. So there was no defense played whatsoever. I think it's going to be fascinating to see if OKC can do a better job of containing the post game of San Antonio, because I really felt like that got all of their shooters rolling a little bit.
And I'm glad you were talking about that because you're getting pretty good at this media thing. That's a perfect segue to what I wanted to talk about. I see what you're doing here.
It's a pass.
Yes, it is. It's an assist, something that LaMarcus Aldridge isn't known to do in his career, and that is what I think that the OKC Thunder need to do as far as guarding LaMarcus. You want to show him different looks, force him into being a passer, whether that's giving him a crowded lane where you fake the double or make the lane look very, very crowded and do not come, or sometimes you want to just double him on catch or double him on first dribble. Mix up the coverages, front the post, force them to throw the ball over the top and double them in that aspect. San Antonio is capable of hitting threes, but they don't take a lot of threes. But what we do know is that if you let LaMarcus play one-on-one, he is capable of having big nights. And last time these two teams played, he had 56 big points. I think OKC has to diversify their portfolio in the way they cover LaMarcus. They have to throw 3 to 4 different looks at him.
And it annihilated the smaller Jeremy Grant when Steven Adams was out as well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Steven Adams, he is going to play, and that's a big thing for the Thunder because he's a strong presence inside for them. Let's take a look back on Thursday night. Russell Westbrook, always interesting how he's rolling into the stadium.
That's how we describing that outfit. Interesting.
Hoping to even catch up to where LaMarcus is at that point.
Yeah, you hate that. I always hated that when I go out of a game and then somebody else would get cooking and have to come back in and try to put out that fire. Boy, it can get tough. It can get tough at times.
And just looking at that box score, seeing a guy like Terrence Ferguson, 21.7-12 from the field, we keep saying with Oklahoma City, if they just had that third guy, right? And Jeremy Grant also with a really good game. Of those players, do you trust them to continue to excel and get better? Do you think that those guys have a higher ceiling?
Well, I think Jeremy Grant is almost among a very elite group of people in this league. There are 5 position defenders. They've used Jeremy Grant on everybody from 1s to 5s. And there are times like LaMarcus Aldridge where he's just too small to handle someone in the post, but he's having a career year. But I could be in the minority. I've always thought of them as a big 3. Even last year I thought of them as a big 3. It's just Steven Adams is the third in that group for me. At a bare minimum, he is a truly elite role player. At a bare minimum, in very much the same way that Draymond Green is for Golden State.
I think he's a high-level role player. I don't really see him in that big 3 because when I think of the big 3, I think of 3 really, really super dynamic offensive guys most of the time. Like when I think of, Golden State's big 3, I think of Clay, Steph, and Durant. When I think of OKC, I think of the big 2, and I think of Steven Adams being a super, super duper role player who plays his role to the best of his abilities. And so that's why I view him at. But to go to your point about shooting, I do think they still need an elite shooter. I like what Grant has done. I think he's improved a lot. To your point, Griff, he is a guy that plays tremendous defense and probably the most versatile defender in the league. But when you talk about a playoff series, and you talk about teams shrinking the floor against Paul George and Russell Westbrook, they're going to give guys like Ferguson, Grant, Schroeder all the jumpers they can handle because if you're a team, you're saying, hey, I know Paul George is good enough to beat me. I know Russell Westbrook is good enough to beat me. But I don't know if Ferguson can hit 3 out of 7 jump shots 7 games in a row in the series. I don't know if a guy like Schroeder, who's an excellent driver and gives them good minutes, I don't know if he can beat me consistently from the perimeter, and that is what teams will try to do, kind of similar to how OKC was built before Durant left, and they would make the guys like Robertson and Dion Waiters beat them because you know that you don't know, but you'll live with those guys beating you. I think they need a shooter.
Well, looking at their front line, Steven Adams with the ankle issue, he will play again tonight. But how do you view their depth? Let's say, for instance, you see him go down with the ankle. If he has an issue late in the season or if he gets into foul trouble in the game, what do you think of their depth up front?
Well, I like what Nerlens Noel brings, and hopefully he'll be back soon. We're hoping he gets a speedy recovery. That was a gruesome hit that he took. But I think Nerlens Noel gives them a little something behind Steven Adams. I like the way he's played this year. He's solid. He's not Steven Adams. He's not on his level, but he can give them something on the inside so they have a little bit of a post presence when Steven Adams isn't playing.
Patrick Patterson absolutely was not an answer for them the other night on LaMarcus Aldridge. The fewer minutes he can play in this particular matchup, the better. But again, in the absence of Nerlens Noel, they really don't have anything behind Steven Adams.
Certainly, Steven Adams, you see him moving nicely, looking like he's going to be able to perform tonight for the Oklahoma City Thunder as they face the San Antonio Spurs. That last game on Thursday night, instant classic. What's going to happen tonight? We're going to find out in a few minutes.